Salisbury Hill, I could see the city light. Wind was blowing, time stood still. Eagle flew out of the night. He was something to observe. Came in close, I heard a voice, standing, stretching every nerve. To listen, had no choice. I did not believe the information, just had to trust imagination. My heart going boom, boom, boom. Child, she said, grab your things, I've come to take you home. Hey, back home. To keep in silence I resigned. My friends would think I was a nut, turning water into wine. Open doors would soon be shut. So I went from day to day, though my life was in a rut, till I thought of what I'd say, which connection I should cut. I was feeling part of the scenery. I walked right out of the machinery. My heart going boom, boom, boom. Hey, she said, grab your things, I've come to take you home. Hey, back home. When illusions spin her net, I'm never where I wanna be. And liberty she pirouette when I think that I am free. Watched by empty silhouettes who close their eyes but still can see. No one taught them etiquette. I will show another me. Today I don't need a replacement. I'll tell them what the smile on my face meant. My heart going boom, boom, boom. Hey, I said, you can keep my things, they've come to take me home. Way back home.
We made it. It's so good to see all your smiling faces. I wish everybody had the experience that the worship leader gets to be able to look at all of these beautiful faces out here. This is absolutely wonderful, and this is what our community is about. Good morning, my name is Tim Kraus, and I'm serving as your worship leader today. I'm grateful to share this service with you both in person and online. We are a community committed to social justice and to supporting the various spiritual and ethical paths of our members and friends. We also acknowledge that we occupy the land that is the ancestral home of the Adena and the Hopewell cultures and the Miamia and Shawandasi people. Our congregation strives to be welcoming to all, so you will see signs around mentioning accommodations such as gender-neutral restrooms, hearing assistance devices. We also have a VIP lounge for our young people who are members. And so if you have any questions, please ask an usher if you need directions for anything. And we're just really glad you're here. If you'd like to know more about our church or about Unitarian Universalist faith, please contact us by emailing member-care@firstuu.com. I want to draw attention to the flowers today. They are provided by Barbara Newman in memory of all of those who died and were affected by the bombing of Hiroshima on August 6, 1945, and the bombing of Nagasaki on August 9, 1945. May we continue to honor and remember all of these lives. Those of you who do know Barbara know that her parents were interned in camps during World War II because they were Japanese. And she's so sorry to not be here today because she is in California commemorating her parents' names and other members of her family into the book of record for the internees. So she is with us in spirit. Her father, by the way, was from the Hiroshima prefecture. Now, it's time to greet our neighbors. I know we could carry on our conversations for quite a while, but we've got a nice reception afterwards for Alex. And for those of you who do not know, we do have our new minister here, Alex Riegel. We're exceedingly pleased to have this many people here today and to have Alex with us. And we're moving forward and turning a new chapter, writing a new chapter in the history of this church, which is exciting and absolutely wonderful. We're going to begin our service today with the lighting of the chalice. And so as we light our chalice today, the chosen symbol of our faith, we humbly recognize that our human lives are never simple. They are complex, confounding, beautiful, and ever-changing. May the light of truth constantly shine in our lives so that it might become easier for us to navigate the uncertainty, the wonder, and the mystery of what it means to be fully human. Our opening hymn today is number 20, Be Thou My Vision. So if you're willing and able, please join us by singing and standing.
Peace World by Alexandra Schmidt. Peace. Pe. Maluia. Peace. Paz. Paz. Salam. Pe. Amahara. Peace. Pe. Amani. Raua. Fried. Pokui. Pe. Frieden. Freda. Burris. Salam. Santi. Hewa. Piyangwa. Peace. Falamo. If you are watching from home, you may pause here to learn more about the animals pictured in this book. So many languages, so many places have words for peace. So I wonder, why is peace so hard to find?
It is amazing how such a simple word is so elusive. But that's the reality of our lives. For our joys and sorrows today, we're going to dispense with the stones and the water because we've got a pretty packed service. But part of being a beloved community is sharing our joys and concerns with each other. So if you would like to share something with the congregation through our Circle of Friends email or in the newsletter, or if you'd like to talk with our resident chaplain, Mary Tarbell Green, please fill out the form on the back of your order of service. That's back here. And place it in the offering basket or drop it off at the desk as you leave the sanctuary today. And someone will be in contact with you if you have a message or a concern. And Reverend Alex will be looking at those as well. And so please know that your voice will be heard. And we do care. And now we're going to have a homily for Hiroshima.
See these shoes? These are my boy's shoes. See these shoes? These are my boy's shoes. These are my boy's shoes. You see these shoes? Yes. These are my boy's shoes. See this boy? This boy here? This boy is not my boy. These are my boy's shoes. When I was in divinity school, I used to make a little bit of money to feed myself by shelving books at the Divinity School library. And of course, when you're a Divinity School student and you shelve books at the Divinity School library, it's a very important task, and that task includes reading at least half of every book before you put it back on the shelf. So I was a slow, fastidious bookshelver. And one day I was thumbing through one of the books I was about to shelve, and it was a book of haikus from Asia. And this haiku came from that book. These shoes are my boy's shoes. This boy is not my boy. That haiku was written by the father of a little boy who died in Nagasaki's bombing on August 9th, 1945. 3 days earlier, we had dropped a bomb on Hiroshima, ostensibly to end the war. And so I've thought an awful lot about that haiku ever since. It has stuck in my brain and my heart for 30-some years. And I can barely utter that haiku without crying, even today. Because I'm a father of a boy. And I feel that haiku very deep within my being. These shoes are my boy's shoes. This boy, it's not my boy. Indeed, the boy had been charred beyond recognition. And had it not been for those shoes, his father never would have found him. So I've thought deeply about this haiku for a long, long time. The meaning of these catastrophic events from many different angles. And one would think that after the world witnessed the incredible devastation of these weapons, we would have concluded that there must be a unilateral ban on such weapons. But there isn't. Instead, it seems that the detonations over Hiroshima and Nagasaki were the starting gun of an arms race. Today, the United States has somewhere around 5,200 nuclear weapons. And every nuclear weapon is 10 to 100 times more powerful than the atomic bombs that got dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Russia has close to 6,000 nuclear weapons. And all of the nuclear-armed countries of the world combined have 13,000 nuclear weapons today. At the height of the arms race, the United States and Russia alone had a combined 70,000 nuclear weapons. We have moved in the wrong direction, friends. So as I said, there are many different perspectives through which you can view these events. And today I want to talk about the spiritual perspective through which we can view these events. But whenever I talk about spirituality, I almost always talk about psychology, because psychology is the devil we're up against as we try to live the spiritual life. The two are closely entwined, and they battle for control over us. So, talking about spirituality, I want to use the doorway of psychology, and I specifically want to talk just a little bit about evolutionary psychology. Evolutionary psychology is still an emerging field in the popular mindset, but it's been an academic interest for decades. And I have studied it in some detail and in increasing detail over the years. and have come to find it probably the most accurate description of what it means to be a human being than any other psychological theory I've encountered. So just really quick in a nutshell, evolutionary psychology boils down to this. Every single person has a preeminent agenda in life. Does anybody know what that agenda might be according to evolutionary psychologists? To replicate your gene pool. That is the primary motivating factor for every single one of us in life, according to evolutionary psychology, to replicate the gene pool. And in my next talk in about 15 minutes, I'm going to talk a little bit more about this. But one of the things that must happen in order to replicate the gene pool is you must have some degree of successful participation in your tribe. Otherwise, you won't find a mate with whom to replicate the gene pool. So the tribe is one of the things that is very important in the human psyche, according to evolutionary psychology. So we're born into the world. We have this agenda of replicating the gene pool, and it is what ultimately drives us through life. And we're also born into these families. And so our parents have an incredible amount of influence over the shaping of our lives, as do our siblings, as does our extended family, as does our peer group, as does society at large. So those two forces, evolutionary psychology with the preeminent agenda of replicating the gene pool, and the conditioning we go through as we grow into life with the people who take care of us, have power over us, encounter us, befriend us, betray us. These forces together condition us into who we are as we sit here today. And this all takes place on a very unconscious level. But who each and every one of us is here today is the result of our evolutionary psychology and the forces that conditioned us as we grew into life. So what in the world does that have to do with spirituality? Well, what it means is that we have different degrees of interest in life. We are by nature self-centered. Our first and most important in the hierarchy of care is ourselves. And then beyond that, it's our children. And beyond that, it's our extended family. And beyond that, it's our circle of friends. And beyond that, and beyond that, and beyond that. You get the gist of this. So when it comes to a little Japanese boy half a world away who dies when an atomic bomb is set off over his city, how much does that affect us? In the hierarchy of care that I have as a human being, it affects me very little. Certainly, it will invoke my sympathies. But does it affect me to the degree that it will invoke action from me? To respond to this event and the tragedy those people suffered as though they mattered to me as much as my own children, my own kin, myself. It won't, because we are conditioned not to be so affected by this. So with that in mind, I want you to think for a minute, shift gears toward the spiritual end of things, of Jesus' words. Whatever you have done to the least of these, you have done unto me. We often fail to understand the profundity of Jesus' teachings because we do not hear those teachings at the level of consciousness from which they were delivered. This explains so many misinterpretations of Jesus. Jesus was living and teaching from a level of consciousness that is unfamiliar to others. And he taught and he spoke and he lived from that level of consciousness. But because we don't have that experience, we fail to understand his teaching. So, what was the level of consciousness from which Jesus lived? Can we get some sense of it that will help us understand the teachings? Well, you all know Jesus was not a Christian. Jesus was a Jew. And Jesus was a mystical Jew. Jesus was a mystical Jew. And so he experienced the world in a way that was different than most Jewish people. And as he was present with people and as he taught people, they sensed something different about him. And what they sensed was the level of consciousness that he embodied. So what was different about it? There's a term that's becoming more and more common in the spiritual landscape today called Advaita. Advaita. The Sanskrit word Vaita means two. It means one and two. It means subject, object. It means me and other. And we perceive the world as subject, object because of the way that we are constructed. But that's the egoic or the psychological perspective on the world. The spiritual perspective on the world that Jesus experienced was not Vedic, it was Advaitic. And it meant, Advaita means not two, one. Not two, one. So there's a level of spiritual consciousness through which you can perceive the reality of the world differently. And you perceive it as one. The many forms are the expression of the one spiritual ground that gives rise to all things. And when you perceive the world as being all one, there's no subject and there's no object. There's no me and there's no you. It's all one. So when you look at the teachings of Jesus through the lens of oneness, of Advaita, this saying means something very different. Whatever you do to the least of these, you do unto me. It's not a philosophical idea. It is a spiritual reality. All of our actions that we take in life are not actions that I take towards some other. They're actions that I take that affect the whole all the time. So when Jesus said, what you do to the least of these, you do to me, he meant it, because there's no separation. Now, take these two thoughts. The conditioned self I explained, rooted in evolutionary psychology and our hierarchy of care that begins first and foremost with me, whose agenda is to replicate my gene pool, and extends in circles to the people that are more valuable to me with that agenda in mind. There are limits to how far my care will extend. In other words, all of our love is conditioned or preferential. Compare that with the teaching of Jesus, that all is one. And you have a teaching that runs against the grain of our conditioning, even against the grain of our evolutionary agenda to pass on the gene pool From the perspective that all is one, there is no place for conditional love. There is no place for preferential love. Does this make sense? So Jesus' ministry was an invitation into this reality. And I tend to talk more about Jesus than most UU ministers. But don't be afraid. I tend to talk about the Sufis more than most UU ministers. And I tend to talk about the Hindus than most UU ministers. You're going to get a lot of spirituality from me, but yes, it will include Jesus. Because I truly believe that there's a perspective on Jesus that is in lockstep with Unitarian Universalism. And a proper understanding of the man and his message will make that clear. So he invites us into his reality through which we perceive that all is one. His ministry is an invitation into this state of consciousness. And if we can get there ourselves, we will learn to love differently. We will learn to abandon preferential or conditioned love and love all as one, what Jesus called agape. So my tagline for the ministry of Jesus is unconditional love, radical inclusivity. How much more UU can you get? So we'll be throwing Jesus into our mix. Stated otherwise, if you accept Jesus' invitation to do the work necessary to live from his level of consciousness, you come to understand that these shoes, these are our shoes. This boy, this is our boy. Not in some abstract, psychological, or philosophical sense. It is a spiritual truth that we're called to learn, to remember, and from which to act. So, with that in mind, I want to submit to you that the spiritual lesson to be learned here on this day of remembrance is that we're all one. There's no separation. And what befalls one befalls us all. So let us contemplate for about 60 seconds in a moment of silence and honor the lives of those who were lost on those fateful days in 1945, and dedicating ourselves to live in the awareness that all is indeed one.
That ringing of the singing bowl reminds me that every August at Oak Ridge, Tennessee, there is a gathering of people who read the names of people who perished in both Nagasaki and Hiroshima. And after every name, a bell is rung, so it is never forgotten. And now for our offering. Each month we designate one of our Sunday plate collection, or we designate our Sunday plate collections to benefit a special cause or a local social service organization. Our August Share the Plate is with the South Avondale Elementary School. Now, many of you know that we've had a long-standing relationship with the South Avondale School, and we've engaged in tutoring for a good number of years now. Well, as is true for every public school, there's never enough money. There's never enough resources to go around, and particularly a school like South Avondale. And this year, the need is particularly great. So that we're designating our Share the Plate giving to the ministry of the at the South Avondale School to buy supplies and books for children. You'll hear more about South Avondale next week, and there'll be a short presentation from a reading specialist there and talking about how the reading program that we've engaged in has helped to change kids' lives. So giving to First Church is easy. You can text to the word give, text the word give to 513-717-7373. If you have access to our Breeze member system, you may click Give Now and fill in the amount and choose among the options. Choose Give This One Time for our Share the Plate option. Or if you can give online at firstuu.com, then click on the Give Now button on our homepage. You can also write a check to First Unitarian Church of Cincinnati and mail it to 536 Linton Street, Cincinnati, Ohio, 45219. If you want to give to our South Avondale work, please write South Avondale in the memo line of your check. If this is your first time with us, please let the virtual plate and the actual plate pass you by. Your presence is gift enough to our church.
You don't know. You need to go and find yourself. You say you'd rather be alone, 'cause you think you won't find it tied to someone else. Who said it's true that the growing only happens on your own? They don't know me and you. I don't think you have to leave. If to change is what you need, you can change right next to me. When you're high, I'll take the lows. You can ebb and I can flow, and we'll take it slow and grow as we go. Grow as we go. And you won't be the only one. I am unfinished, I've got so much left to learn. I don't know how this river runs, but I'd like the company through every twist and turn. Who said it's true that the growing only happens on your own? what you need. You can change right next to me. When you're high, I'll take the lows. You can ebb and I can flow, and we'll take it slow and grow as we go. Grow as we go. Grow as we go. Grow as we go. I don't know who we'll become. I can't promise, it's not written in the stars. But I believe that when it's done, we're gonna see that it was better that we grew up together. Tell me you don't wanna leave, 'cause if change is what you need, you can change right next to me. When you're high, I'll take the lows. You can ebb and I can flow, and we'll take it slow and grow as we go. Grow as we go. Grow as we go. Grow as we go.
And now, again, if you're willing and able to join us in singing, Come Sing a Song with Me, number 346 in our hymnal. This pulpit has been standing in this sanctuary since 1887. And a lot of people have been behind this pulpit since that time. And in the time before 1887, there were many others in another pulpit and in another location for this congregation. And now we welcome a new member to this community of ministers, this community of believers and followers and seekers. And I want to welcome the Reverend Dr. Alex Riegel to this pulpit, to this congregation. And we are so wonderfully glad to have you here.
Thank you all very much. I am incredibly delighted to be here. I've done my research, both on First UU and Cincinnati, and a lot of my perspectives will roll out in casual conversations with you all at board meetings, with staff meetings from the pulpit from time to time. But in a nutshell, I am so excited to be here because I am very enthused by what an incredibly wonderful city Cincinnati seems to be. And the commitment of this congregation to do a ministry that I think will resonate with the message of unconditional love and radical inclusivity. And you are well situated to move forward in that direction, and I'm excited to be helping you. So since I'm new, I've been taking stock of a lot of things. And so I've even got a notebook. And if you'll bear with me for a minute before I start the sermon, which is really just another homily. You're not going to be here till 2 o'clock. Probably 1:30 at the most. Just want to take a few notes real quick. All right, Bonnie. Scoundrel. Crosby. My good friend from Michigan came to see my first service with you all today. Crosby, I know. Brother. Scoundrel. Scoundrel. Ramona. We've already met. Yeah, Ramona. Scoundrel girl. Scoundrel. Tim Kraus. Maybe if I just don't walk there. Scoundrel. All caps. Scoundrel. Exclamation point. I like to have fun. I hope y'all like to have fun. So, one of my parishioners from the congregation I just served said, you might want to think about making your first sermon at First UU about what you mean by scoundrel. Because it doesn't always come across the way you mean it unless people know what you mean. So the first part of this sermon, or maybe most of it, is about scoundrel. And to me, scoundrel is a term of endearment. We're all scoundrels. I ain't up here telling you you're all sinners, am I? But we all are scoundrels. And I want to talk to you about what I mean by that. Because it is the leaping off place for a slow roll through this Sunday, the next Sunday, and then the third Sunday I preach, which is the 27th. Scoundrel for me is a term of endearment. And I use it as a gentle reminder to go easy on ourselves. and to go easy on one another. And also as a reminder of the purpose of the spiritual life. So you'll hear me invoke the term a fair amount. So I want to start by explaining why the term scoundrel is a gentle reminder for us to go easy on ourselves and others. And I want to do this by pulling on a thread I mentioned a few moments ago in my homily. I want to talk again about evolutionary psychology. Now, I'm not going to do this to you every week, but I've discovered that most people don't really understand or even know much about evolutionary psychology, and it is such a compelling explanatory device for what it means to have the human experience that I'd like to make you all pretty aware of it, because it is a great tool to use to talk about the psychological and the spiritual. So again, on evolutionary psychology, the core motive for human beings, according to evolutionary psychology, is the replication of the gene pool. I want my genes to be replicated in my offspring. That is the principal motivator for all of us. As one of my friends says, who tends to talk about evolutionary psychology a lot, well, Alex, you know, it's all about sex. Now, what he means by that, it's all about replicating the gene pool. And he's not wrong. That's what drives us fundamentally. And we have this instinctual nature. And our instinctual nature drives us at a very core level forward through life. And our instinctual nature is designed to help us succeed at replicating the gene pool. That's what our instinctual nature is all about. And our instinctual nature basically can be divided into three parts. There's the sexual part, meaning that if we don't find a sexual partner, we won't replicate the gene pool. And so we have a strong instinctual drive to mate. There's also an instinctual drive for what we might call self-preservation. I must accumulate enough of the things I need to keep me alive and healthy in order to survive and pass on my gene pool. Food, shelter, clothing, what have you. And as I mentioned in the homily, we also have this intense need for tribal participation. We must participate successfully in the tribe. Because if we don't, we're not likely to meet our self-preservation needs. It's going to be a lot rougher if the tribe rejects us. And we're not likely to find a mate. And we will fail at the task of replicating the gene pool. And then, of course, as I also mentioned, these instinctual drives express themselves in the context of our parents, our immediate family, our friend group, our peer group, and society at large. So hopefully that sounds mostly like review. But once somebody explains evolutionary psychology, it just kind of intuitively makes sense, doesn't it? It is such a powerful explanatory tool that I truly believe that I can explain every single one of your behaviors by appealing to what instinct is active in the moment to support your evolutionary agenda. And over time, as we have more conversations, I think you'll see just how compelling it is. Okay, so as a result of our evolutionary agenda and our instinctual drives and how they get conditioned through life, by the time we become about 25-ish, mid-20s, maybe a little later, we tend to be pretty conditioned. We tend to be pretty predictable in the way we show up in the world. One way you can talk about this is by saying, well, you kind of know so-and-so pretty well. They're pretty predictable because if you tell them this, they're going to behave this way, or if they see that, they're going to behave that way. And really, if it's somebody you know pretty well, you're right most of the time, right? Not always. You always got to give people a chance to prove you wrong about them. Seems fair. But most of the time, we're pretty good at predicting how somebody's going to respond to something we say or something that we might do. And this is because by the time we become conditioned, we have particular habits of mind, and we have particular emotional habits, and we have particular bodily habits, and they play out over and over and over again, which makes it possible for other people to interpret us. So we become conditioned and predictable. Yeah? Does that make sense? Yeah. So I call this the conditioned self. And the conditioned self operates well enough that we manage to make our way through life. And mostly through those strategies and a little bit of luck, we succeed at the evolutionary agenda. But whenever there's a threat to us, to our conditioned self, to our strategy for how we are going to meet our evolutionary agenda, right? We tend to react in a defensive way. Usually, when somebody challenges us or questions us or threatens us, we hunker down on our haunches and we act defensively because we're going to protect ourselves because we have our agenda. And we tend to do this in negative ways. We might alienate the other scoundrel. Just not going to talk to that person anymore. Or we might let everybody else know the truth about the other scoundrel. Or we might even act physically aggressive toward the other scoundrel. This is what we do when we're challenged. This, my friends, is the nature of the beast. It's all by evolutionary design. And it's all necessary to an extent to succeed at the evolutionary agenda of replicating the gene pool. My way of talking about this is to say, we are all scoundrels. Amen, sister? We are all scoundrels. Yeah? Does that make sense to you? All right, so everybody say, I am a scoundrel. Wow, that's really good. We're all scoundrels. Now, having said that, here's the good news about us being scoundrels. By the time we become these conditioned beings that I'm talking about, by the time we reach the point where we can even be self-aware enough to understand how we became this way, it has all already happened unbeknownst to us. It's usually not until midlife or later where people begin to go, maybe I should pay some attention to this thing called Alex and wake up to the reality of how we show up in the world. And by the time I do that, it's all already happened, which is good news, because Alex isn't to blame for being Alex. By the time he knew he was an Alex and what that meant, he was already an Alex being that thing. And Tim's not to blame for being Tim, and Bonnie's not to blame for being Bonnie, and Crosby's not to blame for being Crosby, and Ramona's not to blame for being Ramona. Hallelujah! We are not to blame. But once we understand that, doesn't that invoke a little bit of compassion for yourself? And compassion for the other scoundrels in our lives? We're all scoundrels, but none of us is to blame. Remember that. None of us is to blame. Okay? Now, you could just say that I've given a scientific explanation of sin. It is. It's a scientific explanation of sin. And it's a scientific argument for unconditional love. You follow that one? All right. Now, that's the good news. You are not to blame. Here's the bad news. As of this moment, now that you know this, you are responsible for who and what you become next. That's the bad news. You are responsible for how you show up in the world. All right, did I just ruin your day? Y'all still going to enjoy your ice cream? All right. So to make this point, I want to go to Jesus and the adulteress. Now we're pivoting back to the spiritual end of things. So do you know the story of Jesus and the adulteress? All right. So there were these Pharisees who wanted to test Jesus as a teacher, supposedly, of the Torah, the law of Moses. And they brought some woman who was caught in adultery, and they brought her to Jesus, and they said, the law of Moses says we should stone this woman. What say ye? You know the story? And he bent down, and he started to write in the sand. And we don't know what he wrote, but I'm guessing it was a list of sins of certain people present. And he said, let you who are without sin cast the first stone. Right? I'm telling you, the man was tough. And they left, one by one. And there he was left alone with her. And he said to the woman, woman, where are those who would accuse you? And she said, there are none, my Lord. And he said, what did he say? Neither do I accuse you. Neither do I accuse you. Because he understood. She's not to blame for being a scoundrel. Neither do I accuse you. Now, when most preachers preach about this story, they say, isn't the forgiveness of the Savior wonderful? It's a story about forgiveness. Yeah? That's where it usually ends. I don't think it ends there. I think all of that's a setup for one sentence that comes next. What does Jesus say to her next? Wow, I am impressed. Most Unitarian congregations, when I ask a question like that, it's dead silence. You can hear a pin drop. All right, first you, Cincy. Go your way and sin no more. In other words, now, woman, you are blameless. But as of this moment, you are responsible for how you show up in the world. That's some pretty steep teaching, huh? You are responsible for how you show up in the world. So as I think of this story, I think about this, and this is also very central to my own spiritual journey. The point of the spiritual life is not as many think. The simple affirmation of a theological idea that gets us into heaven when we drop the mortal coil. You don't just say, I believe, and get in. That's not the point of the spiritual life. The point of the spiritual life is to become more than the scoundrels we discover ourselves to be, if and when we discover ourselves to be scoundrels. Did you get that? The point of the spiritual life is to become more than we discover ourselves to be, if and when we finally discover ourselves to be scoundrels. And if you never in life discover that you're a scoundrel, woe be unto you. It's in the discovery of our scoundrelness that we then have the opportunity to do this work, which is beautiful work. In other words, the point of the spiritual life is the transformation of being. It is the transformation of being from the scoundrel we are to the best self we can become. That's the point of the spiritual life, and it is also the test of your spiritual life. And it is the test of a spiritual teaching. Here's how I remember this as I go throughout my days. One time I was writing a sermon, and sometimes I'm writing a sermon and a thought comes to me and I'm like, ooh, I think that one was for me. And it's like, I think I'm writing this sermon for me. And so I was writing this sermon and this thought came to me. Have I yet become the person I want to be before I die? Have I yet become the person I want to be before I die? And my next thought was, no, I am a long way from it. And then I thought, there are two ways that you can fulfill this question. You can, eventually, when you die, you will have become the person you're going to be before you die, right before you die. Right? It is a fait accompli. This will happen to you. And hopefully, after all those decades of life experience, the person you are at that point is the best person you could become. But don't we want to become that best person we want to be before we die? Like, I want to be the best Alex I can be now. I want to become the person I want to be before I die now. And then live that way for the remainder. I assume you resonate with that thought. Why wait till the last minute to be the best you can be? Are you as loving as you'd like to be? Now be honest with yourselves. Don't raise your hands. I'm not calling people out. Yeah. Think about it for a minute. Are you as loving as you'd like to be? All the time? Are you as forgiving as you would like to be? All the time? Are you as patient? Are you as charitable? Are you as humble? I'm not. I'll save you a lot of angst because, when I do this kind of sermon, I make myself the volunteer sinner and I'm the one who confesses of my shortcomings. I'm not as loving as I'd like to be all the time. I'll work at it. I'm not as patient as I'd like to be all the time. I'll work at it. I'm not as charitable. I'm not as forgiving. I'm not as humble. I am in process of transformation. And I find that the spiritual tools available to me and the psychological insights of the contemplative traditions that ground my journey are incredibly powerful tools to help that transformation. I stand before you a scoundrel today, but you would not have liked the scoundrel I was 20 years ago. I'm in process. And I hope you like the scoundrel you'll experience me as 2, 3, 4 years down the road. I hope you like that one more than the one you see today. So the process of transformation is a long journey. And it does not take place without serious, continuous effort. Because we are up against that conditioned self that is deeply rooted in the very powerful instincts that cause us to act in negative ways. That's a big demon to be fighting. All right, so next week, I'm going to discuss the means by which this transformation takes place, right? This transformation from the scoundrel we are to the person we want to become before we die. You got to wait till next week. It's a 3-part sermon series, and I'm slow rolling it. But between now and then, I want to give you this metaphor to ponder, a metaphor for the journey of life. The journey of life is as if a king had sent you to a faraway country to perform a specific task. And then you go to that country and you perform 100 other tasks, but not the task on account of which the king had sent you. And the time comes to return to the king. So you return to the king, knowing that you're going to have to explain that you have forgotten what the king had sent you to do, and essentially had not accomplished anything at all. Blessed be, my friends, I am so happy to be with you. Thank you.
Time to know that I'm going to say everybody and then la la. Sounds good to me. Yes. Everybody now, la 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 la. What's happened to you? Used to be so shy. You used to hang your head down. You wouldn't look in my eyes. Did you have some great vision? Did you finally break through? Did you shake the foundations? What's happened to you? La 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 la. What's happened to you? Used to look so tired. Now there's spring in your step and your words are on fire. Did you hear some great secret? Did the words ring of truth? Did you rise from the ashes? What's happened to you? Where the four winds meet, the world is so still. The waves are not pounding, and the hungry are filled. Our shadows have crossed here, where the sun touched the ground. The gathered are singing, oh, what a beautiful sound. They're singing, la, 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 happened to you? You used to be so unkind, used to curse at this poor world. So what changed your mind? What stirred such compassion is a mystery to me. I don't know what happened, oh, but I like what I see. Where the world is me, the world is still. The waves are not pounding, and the hungry are filled. Our shadows have crossed here, where the sun touched the ground. The gathered are singing, oh, what a beautiful sound. They're singing la 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 la. Everybody now la 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 la. La 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 la. Right now, la 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la. Thank you. Woo!
It's a great question to end on. Have I yet become the person I want to be before I die? Now, Horace Mann, the great educator, used to preach from our pulpit every now and then. He was president of Antioch College at the time, and he would come down on the Little Miami Railroad on the weekends, and he would preach at our church. One of the things that Horace Mann would often say, and he was sort of full of this Calvinist approach, which relied heavily on guilt, is he said, be ashamed to die without at least winning one small victory for humanity. And I think what you've done, Alex, is you've given us a corollary to that. And it's be ashamed to die if you've not yet become the person you want to be, because that is a victory for humanity. So as we extinguish this chalice, we'll repeat the words printed on our screen. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. So it's time for us to celebrate, and we're going to have a great gathering in the fellowship hall, the Ellen Hall room, and let's do that as the band takes us out in our postlude.
Used to hang your head down, you wouldn't look in my eyes. Did you see some great vision? Did you finally break through? Did you shake the foundation? What's happened to you? We're singing la 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 la. Everybody now, la 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 la.